Hello, people. I hope that lighting is okay. Um, my main overhead light has been broken for a while now, so I've just got side light on, and it's warmer in this room than the room I usually make videos in. Um, I've just read that the infamous paparazzo Ron Galella has died at the age of 91. Now, before I get into my thoughts on this, I don't mean about his death, I mean about his life and his legacy. Just a quick disclaimer or clarification on how I see the principle of talking about someone when they've just died. Some people take the view that, oh, no, you can't say anything, he's just died. Like, don't speak ill of the dead. Then you get others who take the approach of being like really, really blunt. And they don't hide their negative feelings towards someone. I feel that when someone is an important figure in one sense or another, and Galella was an important figure, I think, for all the wrong reasons, but nevertheless important and influential, then there has to be an honest assessment. I do not believe in blind eulogies. I do not believe in just giving gushing praise over someone. And I don't agree with those who say if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. I think that's a weak argument because if someone has had an influence, I think it is valid to discuss their legacy. I'm particularly interested in it because I've trained as a freelance journalist, so this directly involves the industry I'll be involved in. Not the same branch of that industry, but journalism and the world of journalism is a very, very broad scope and it comes under that. Um, Wrongly, in my view, but it does. Um, okay, so if you haven't heard of this guy, basically, he probably done more than anyone else to popularize what we now know as the paparazzi in about the 1960s onwards. Probably there wasn't a single person who invented the paparazzi. It probably developed over time. But I'm just going to read out a bit of the Independence article on this. I don't know if it's a formal eulogy, if it's just a report. Um, it says via AP Newswire, so it's not by any particular reporter. Ron Galella, the photographer known for his visceral celebrity shots and his dogged pursuit of Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, who sued him and won a restraining order, has died at age 91. Galella died Saturday at his home in Montville, New Jersey, said Jeffrey Croft, a spokesperson and the editor of Galella's most recent book, 100 Iconic Photographs, a retrospective. The cause was congestive heart failure, Croft said. Galella amazed millions of images in a career that began in the 1960s, earning superbits like the Paparazzo extraordinaire for his up-close, candid shots of the rich and famous. His subjects included Hollywood icons like Ava Gardner and Greta Garbo, singers from Frank Sinatra to Lady Gaga, and sports personalities including Muhammad Ali. His work appeared in magazines like Time, People, and the National Enquirer, and 22 books that he put out. So, ironically, he was somewhat famous in his own right. Many of Galella's subjects did not want to be photographed. Marlon Brando punched Galella in the face outside a New York City restaurant in 1973, breaking his jaw and knocking out five teeth. Elvis Presley's bodyguards slashed Galella's tires, and Sean Penn spat at him. Onassis battled Galella in court for years, testifying that he had made her life intolerable, almost unlivable, with his constant surveillance. In 1972, a judge ordered Galella to keep 25 foot away from Onassis and 30 foot away from her children. Galella confessed to an obsession with Onassis in the 2010 documentary Smash His Camera, directed by Leon Gast. I had no girlfriend, he said. She was my girlfriend in a way. Ha! Yeah, nothing creepy about that statement. Despite his notoriety, Galella's photos received accolades and have been collected by institutions including New York's Museum of Modern Art. One of the MoMA works, a striking image of an artist walking in Madison Avenue in 1971, that Galella titled Wimblow and Jackie is among the best known photographs of the former First Lady. His work speaks for itself, Croft says. And that's the end of the article. And there's a lot of reports like that. I just typed his name into Facebook to see what would come up, and his own company, of course, they're full of gushing praise. Um, he's had people coming out and saying how sorry they are and what a great guy he was and so on, which I find perplexing. I think someone could be charming whilst being a very obnoxious individual. I think someone can have that sort of dual approach. So, people who met him probably he was quite civil and almost normal. But to me, you cannot disassociate the man with the legacy that he left, which, in my opinion, is totally toxic. Um, I've always had contempt for the paparazzi. I, I don't want to be vitriolic so much, um, because in of itself is not very practical. But how I feel about them is they are nothing but glorified stalkers, and I think that too many legislations are far too soft on them. I mean, during the phone hacking inquiry, or leading up to the phone hacking inquiry, which also involved paparazzi activity, actress Sienna Miller testified that being pursued by male paparazzos was making her life unbearable. Now, imagine this, a young woman um, being pursued by men that she doesn't know outside her own home, when she's going for a walk. Imagine if that was a normal person, right? A normal woman, and a bunch of strange men that she didn't know was following her around. Most people would say that's creepy. That's, arrest them. So why the hell should the paparazzi be treated any differently? Why should someone be less sympathized with just because they're famous, or a public figure? I think it's a ridiculous argument. I accept that if someone is in the public eye, they should expect a certain degree of scrutiny. You're not going to have a life the way you would not being in the public eye, right? So I've always said, actors, singers, and so on, they they should not expect special treatment in terms of the law. They should not expect special treatment in terms of, for example, defended journalists asking tough questions. I don't have much time for actors who play prima donnas and storm out just because they don't like the questioning. I think if a fair question, that's okay. Um, and they have to get used to negative reviews and so on and so on. I think that's all legitimate. Politicians, obviously, in the case of their policies, but in the case of the paparazzi, it's more targeted, particularly at three industries. I would say film, music, and sports. I would say those are the three areas, particularly film, that paparazzi seem to target. Politicians and business people to some extent, but I'd say less so. Um, it's no secret that over the years, numerous celebrities have lashed out at them. Bjork has, Alec Baldwin has, Sam Worthington got into a runoff. I think I made a video of it in New York City where the paparazzo Li Sheng actually had the audacity to try and sue him, even though he was defending his wife. And the paparazzo's agency at the time made the perverse argument that she started it because she was the first to strike. But this was a couple who were being stopped. And these people aren't even above targeting celebrities' children. I think they're the lowest of the low. And it what they do angers me, but what particularly angers me is the way they're normalized as photographers. They're stalkers. That's what they are. They're stalkers. And I say shame on any editor who ever buys the photographs. So Ron Galella may have been, you know, the pioneer. He may have been somewhat different from the others in the sense that his work was perceived to be sort of almost artistic. But in the end of the day, this idea that Jackie and Asa sort of they had this mutual understanding, I think, is very dubious. I mean, the fact of the matter is, the former First Lady took a restraining order out against him. The fact she felt compelled to do that, um, I honestly believe in cases where celebrities lash out, I honestly, if I was a judge, I would see it as a mitigating factor. I would see it as provocation, and especially if children were involved, I'd throw the case out and say if a paparazzi gets a jaw broken, you know, I'm not saying violence should be encouraged, but when you grind someone down, when you hound them like that, when you stalk them, when you threaten their children, when you threaten their husband or their wife who may not be in the public eye, um, then I think it is a totally human response to lash out. If I was a public figure and these creeps were thrusting their camera into, say, my girlfriend or my wife's face or my children, and they weren't public figures, I'd lash out and, bring it on. It's something I would do. Recently, I came across a film. I didn't watch it, but I saw the trailer. It's called Paparazzi, 2004, and it's a pretty dark thriller. I'm not really sure who the cast were. I didn't know the actors, but basically, it's about an actor who is, he's at the top of the world, but is pursued by paparazzi, and as is the usual story, he lashes out, and they're just making his life hell. And on one occasion, that's what I gathered from the trailer, almost like Princess Diana, his wife is killed in a car crash caused by these creeps, and they scarp her off because they know they were responsible. Now he's taking anger management because he previously punched one of them, and that's a manipulative sort of way you know, they term it like the celebrity has an anger problem. Um, anyway, in the film, yeah, he goes out for revenge basically. Now it's a bit of artistic license, but I can imagine in the real situation, a lot of celebrities, I'm even reluctant to say celebrities because that almost dumbs down like they deserve what they're going through. Public figures, there must have been times when they really must have wanted to lash out, but they didn't. I mean, in the case of Bjork, she was exhausted. She'd been in a long flight, and this female paparazzo, most of them are men, but there are some women as well, just thrusting a camera in their face. Um, I think they're scum, to be quite honest. And I think that they're a totally toxic influence on the world of photography and journalism. And I don't think anyone with integrity should support or defend them. I really don't. I don't think there's any public interest whatsoever in that sort of photography. I think it's sleazy. Now some might say, well, it's more realistic because you're getting more raw photos as opposed to pose photos. Okay, there's some truth in that, but being a more realistic photo to me doesn't justify stalking. It doesn't justify making a young woman feel frightened. Um, it doesn't justify wearing a guy down so much that he lashes out as a totally human response. It's disgusting what they do. And Ron Galella is um, one of the driving forces behind how this industry spawned. So I will not cry crocodile tears. I think he had a profoundly negative influence. One last thing, TMZ, a trashy website. They are very much epitomized paparazzi behavior nowadays. They get into these very personalized, intrusive photos, and then they act surprised when a celebrity responds the way they do. Um, I personally think that it should be illegal for newspapers to take stalking photographs. I believe, that should just be illegal. I don't think it's free speech. I don't think it is. Well, it's not free speech. It's not an opinion. It's an action. But this perverse argument that people make, well, they're public figures, so they should just put up with it. Being good at your job, being a good actor, being a public figure doesn't mean, oh, well, the price to pay is you just have to put up with being stalked and having your children compromised. I think that's a ridiculous conclusion. This idea that if someone's successful in their field, then, well, they just have to put up with being stalked. That's it. It's part and parcel of fame. I think that's a very perverse argument. Um, I mean, what sort of message is that going to send out to a young actor or actress? That if you want to be successful in this industry, you have to put up with the paparazzi. I think that's perverse. Um, so, if you're defending them, I would check your moral compass, really. Um, because, like I say, take away that fame factor, what you have left is a bunch of people following a stranger that they don't know. That's what it comes down to, really. Um, and I think it's utterly reprehensible. Um, and Ron Galella, that's his legacy. All these people eulogizing over him. Um, I don't care how nice a guy he was to you. to his victims, to his targets. He was a stalker, and that's all he was. I mean, he has one picture where he was famously wearing a helmet because he didn't want to be punched again. So he obviously didn't learn his lesson. I don't think there was anything brave about what he done. Um, these people almost want to be attacked because it's a bit of attention for them, and it gets them to distort the situation and say the public figure has an anger problem. I don't know a single. If you look at the internet of paparazzi videos, almost universally people are condemning them. But the public has a role to play as well. Particularly, I mentioned newspapers, but it's also like gossip magazines. I don't read women's magazines, obviously. I don't even read men's magazines. I think they've probably improved a bit, but they definitely have a checkered history with this as well. I think any self-respecting editor, if I was editing a publication and a paparazzo sent me work, I'd tell them to do one. I'd be tempted to report them, in fact, because I think they're a stain on the industry. I think they're a negative force. Um, and I don't care how controversial a celebrity is, whatever the negative sides of their personality, they might have a bad temper to begin with. They might not be a very nice person. Even in those cases, I don't think it's justified because the paparazzi are not exactly showing themselves to be any better. You get people like Liam Gallagher, Mike Tyson, and others who have a controversial reputation. But the thing about the paparazzi is they don't just target controversial people. They will target anyone whose fame is deemed high enough to be, a target. And it's disgusting seeing, decent people who, really do try to be there for the fans, who try to give interviews, who just try to, to be a decent role model, be hounded by these creeps. So I think there should be much tougher laws against them. I think in certain American states, California, probably New York as well, I think the laws on the paparazzi are far, far too weak. Those laws pretty much, you know, it shouldn't be the onus on the public figure to get a restraining order. It should just be a no-brainer. If someone's being stopped, um, they should, there should be action taken against the stalker. To me, it's a no-brainer. So that was Ron Galella's legacy. A pretty shameful one, in my opinion.